Alright, I'm David Harry, and in this video I'm going to show you a really tiny SSD which is absolutely fantastic for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Basically, it is the fastest off-the-shelf SSD that I've managed to find so far for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, if you haven't got time to kind of like watch a very detailed video, because this is going to be quite a long detailed video, let me just tell you what the results are here. So, the write speed of the drive with the Pro Max here is 867 megabytes per second, and the read speed is 911 megabytes per second. So basically, that is like, you know, probably the fastest you're gonna get on an iPhone 15 Pro Max. Anyways, what I'm gonna do now, just before I dig into the video, which is going to consist of like all kinds of close-ups and showing the drive properly, and then my exhaustive testing for like calculating the bitrate and stuff, I just need to explain a few things here. So the drive in question here is the Beetle X31, which is a USB-C SSD by SK Hynix. Now, this particular drive comes in a 0.5 terabyte and a 1 terabyte variation. This happens to be the 1 terabyte variation. And for complete transparency, SK Hynix sent me this SSD in exchange for a review, and I get to keep the SSD after the review, although no money has changed hands. Now, there might be some of you out there thinking to yourselves, who are SK Hynix? I've never heard of them before. Well, SK Hynix happen to be one of the most established and biggest manufacturers of DRAM and NAND. Now, whilst the name SK Hynix may not necessarily roll off the tongue in the way like, say, Samsung or Western Digital would do when it comes to storage and such, the thing with SK Hynix is that they manufacture the DRAM and the NAND storage for thousands of different products for hundreds and hundreds of different manufacturers, and that includes Apple as well. So what that basically means is that out of all of the technology that you own, there's a fair chance that a whole bunch of that technology has got SK Hynix DRAM or NAND chips inside of it. Now, just another couple of things here before I jump into the video proper, as it were. So I've obviously already recorded what you're about to see because, well, I must have done in order to be able to give you the bit rates up front and stuff like that. But there was a couple of things that I missed out. Right, one of them is the disk itself, or the case for the SSD, is made out of an aluminium alloy, so it is really tough. Now, does it warm up? I didn't mention that in the video, but I will now. So yes, it warms up ever so slightly, and it did during this video. However, there is another video that I've done with this drive and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is where I'm recording ProRes 422HQ to it at 4K 60. Now, I actually filled the drive up with like a single long take, or at least a residual of what was on the drive, because there's already some files on it. Now, that was a very long file and a very long take, and the thing is, the drive only warmed up ever so slightly, and that was basically pushing it really hard with, like, you know, a massive video file being recorded to it. Now, on that basis as well, there will be a link here or in the description or at the end of the video somewhere, which will take you to that other video showing you how it works with the iPhone 15 Pro Max to be used as an external video recording drive for the likes of ProRes and stuff like that. Anyway, I think I've done enough here in the intro, so let me get into the video proper. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is to just quickly run through the main packaging and what comes in the box. So as we can see here, this is the main box, which holds absolutely everything. Also, we have got this secondary box here, which holds the USB-A to C cable and the USB-C to C cable. We then have this other little box here, which holds this little clear bumper case, which is really neat. I will show you this in a second. We've also got our standard bits of paperwork, warranty and quick setup, etc. And then also what we've got here are our USB-C to C cable and the USB-A to C cable. And then finally, we have got this other box, which is like a tray which fits inside the main box, and then inside here we have got the actual SSD. Now, just taking a quick look at the two USB cables that come supplied with the package, and this one is obviously the USB-A to USB-C cable, and this one is a 5 gigabits per second cable. And this is the USB-C to USB-C cable that is supplied in the package. Now, this is a 10 gigabits per second cable, so basically what this is designed to do is to perfectly match the bus speed for the USB-C interface on the SSD itself. Now moving on to the SSD, and the first thing we are going to notice here is just how small and compact the SSD is. Now, as an example, there it is in the palm of my hand, so we can see that it is really small. And to be honest, I've only actually got small hands, so that is a really tiny SSD. Now, the next thing that we're going to notice is all these curves on the SSD. So this is basically called the Beetle X31. And the reason why it's called the Beetle is because it has got a shape which is quite similar to a scarab beetle. Also as well, it is a nice champagne gold type color. Now, on this side here, we have got our USB-C port, which, as I've already mentioned, is a 10 gigabits per second port, which is basically USB 3.2 Gen 2. And then next to it here, we've got a hole which has got a light behind it, which gives us our indicators and stuff for the disk access. And then on the underneath here, we have got two rubber strips on the underside, which will help the SSD to not slip about when it's on a flat surface, such as a table. And then just to finish off this close look at the SSD, as we can see here, all of the other edges don't have any ports or any features on them. So basically the whole unit is just really nice and smooth all the way around. And then finally, as far as everything that comes within the package is concerned, we have got this transparent bumper style case, and this seems to be made of some kind of like silicone rubber. Now all we do here is just simply pop the SSD within inside this bumper case here. So let me just pop that in. And as we will see, it just protects all the edges and the sides really well. Now, when you pop this in, just make sure to align the hole in the actual case correctly to the SSD itself. And like I say, this will offer you some form of protection onto the edges and the sides of the SSD. Now, to connect this SSD to your iPhone couldn't be any easier. We just take one end of the USB-C to USB-C cable, pop that into the USB-C port on the SSD, and then we just take the other end of the USB-C to USB-C cable and connect it to the USB-C port on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So let me just do that. Now, what's interesting to mention here is, as we can see, I've got a case on my iPhone and the cable does fit in. Now, it does fit in quite tightly. However, I've got a lot of USB-C cables which will not connect to any phone once they are inside of a case. So although it does kind of fit in very snug and quite tight, it actually does fit in and it does work. Okay, so it's now time to get into the speed testing. So as we can see, there's the SSD there. It is connected to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Then I've got another phone here which has got a stopwatch on it. So what I'm going to do is to take a large video file. I'm going to copy it over to the SSD, which is going to give us our write speed to the SSD. And then what I'm going to do is to copy that file back to the phone, and then that is going to give us our read speed from the SSD. Now, don't forget here, whatever kind of like results we get on this particular test are going to be very specific to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So these speeds may not be the same with like other phones or other USB-C type devices. So just bear that in mind. This particular test is very specific to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So what I'm going to do here is go into my file manager on the phone. Now immediately we're going to see an icon here that says X31. Now this is really good because what this is telling us is that the SSD is already in a format which the iPhone 15 Pro Max will understand, and indeed this will be the same for the standard iPhone 15 as well. Now on the point of the format as standard is exFAT on this particular SSD. Now if you intend on using this SSD with other Mac and Apple devices such as say MacBooks or Mac desktops or even iPads and stuff like that, then you may want to consider formatting to APFS. Now APFS may give you a slight speed advantage. I'm not entirely sure with this one because I've not tested it with APFS. However, like I've just said, if you are in a completely Mac and Apple only environment, APFS would be the preferred format. Now, the reason why I've not formatted to APFS and the reason why I won't be with this particular SSD is because I'm going to be using this SSD with my Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. So if I were to format this SSD to APFS, unfortunately it won't be able to be used with any of my Samsung devices, hence the reason why I'm just going to leave this on exFAT. Also, something else to remember here as well, if you're going to be using this SSD with the likes of, say, a Windows computer or maybe a Chromebook or something like that, then it would be best left as exFAT, because once again it is going to be difficult to use APFS with any other devices, or at least use it properly. So nonetheless, the point that I'm getting at here is the SSD comes formatted as exFAT. As we can see, it pops straight up on the iPhone. So for anybody who is not interested in like file formats and stuff like that, do not worry. The SSD as standard will work immediately straight away with your iPhone. Okay, so now that I've gotten all of that super boring stuff out of the way with, and I have also taken a break there as well to have my dinner, I am now ready to get into the actual speed tests themselves. So what I'm going to do from the browser here, I am going to go to on my iPhone. So these are now all files which are located on the iPhone itself. Now at the top here we can see a file, and I don't know if we can see properly there. I'll try and zoom in, but that says it is 72.03 gigabytes in size. Now the actual file size there, to be exact, is 72,026 megabytes as per measured by Mac OS. Now just another quick thing to mention here, when we talk about storage like SSD and such, we actually measure in base 10, which basically means that there are 1000 megabytes within a gigabyte and like 1000 gigabytes within a terabyte. This is actually what we call base 10, and it is the true measurement for when we talk about file sizes and also file transmission. Now a lot of people get mistaken and think that it is 1024. That standard actually changed in 1999. So since 1999, all measurements for the likes of drive capacity and like speed and stuff is measured in base 10. So this is the correct way of measuring these speeds and such, and obviously and ultimately coming up with the actual bit rate correctly. Okay, so with all that said, then what I am going to do is to tap on this file here. I'm going to select copy. I'm going to come back to the root of the browser. I'm going to go to the X31 here. Now what I'm going to do is have to do this quietly, as in not talk. So I'm going to try and hit copy here and then start on the stopwatch at the same time. So if you give us a moment. Okay, so I managed to hit paste and start at the same time there. Quite often I get those wrong and have to restart things over again, but I got it right that time. Anyway, what I'm going to do here, because this will take like a short time, I'm just going to speed this up, and then what I will do is come back towards the end and get ready to hit stop on the stopwatch. And then what that will allow us to do is to get a timing which will then allow us to calculate the bit rate or the speed. Okay, I'm going to come back in here now, and then once this little thing disappears up here and the file's transferred, I'll hit stop. So there we go, stop. Okay, so that's saying 1 minute and 22 seconds. I was probably slightly late somewhere there, so I'm just going to round that up to 23. So I'm going to call that 1 minute and 23 seconds. Okay, so I've just made a note of that time, and of course what that time was in reference to was the write speed of the SSD within this particular setup. So what I'm going to do now is come back to the root. So what I'm going to do is delete the file from on my iPhone, and then we're going to copy the file back from the SSD to the iPhone, in which case we are going to be then getting the read speed of the SSD within this setup. So let me just go onto the iPhone here. I'm just going to select that file and I'm going to delete the file. Okay, let me just come back to the root of the browser. What it is, I'm doing all this in real time as best as possible, just so that you can understand exactly what's going on. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to see if it's necessary to delete the bin. Yeah, I'm just going to delete all. Now the reason why I'm deleting the bin is just so that like there's no residual files hanging around that could get in the way of anything. So if I go into the bin, there's no files there. And then if I go back to, not the iCloud, if I go back to on my phone there, as you can see, that file doesn't exist there. So what I'm going to do is go to the X31. And before I do that, hit reset on the stopwatch because that's important. Right, I'm going to select the file there. Then I'm going to select copy. I'm going to come back to the main browser, go back to the root on my iPhone. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to paste the file and hit start. And of course, what we're doing here is working out the read speed of the SSD within this particular configuration. So let me just get this ready. So paste and start at the same time. Okay, it looks like I got that one right as well. Okay, so once again, same thing. I'm just going to speed up through this and then I will come back in just at the end and make a note of the timing. Okay, I'm going to come back in here, and obviously when that blue dot thing disappears and the file's gone over, I'm going to hit stop here on the stopwatch. So stop. Okay, now that says 1 minute, 18 seconds and 72 or 0.72. So what I'm going to do there, I'm just going to round that up to the 19. So I'm going to call that 1 minute and 19 seconds. So if you just give us a moment. Okay, so I've just made a note of that timing. So that was 1 minute and 19 seconds as far as the read speed is concerned for this particular SSD within this particular setup here. So just give us a moment whilst I make some calculations and we will get the exact read and write speeds for the SSD again within this particular setup. Okay, so having done my quick calculations, here are the results. Now, as far as the write speed is concerned, which is moving the file from the iPhone to the SSD, that took 1 minute and 23 seconds, which is 83 seconds. So if we take 72,026, which is the size of the file as far as megabytes is concerned, and then divide that by 83 because it's 83 seconds, we get a result of 867. So that is 867 megabytes per second, which is actually really quite high. Now, as far as the actual read speed is concerned, that's even better. So moving the file from the SSD back to the iPhone, which in this instance is the read speed of the SSD, that took 1 minute and 19 seconds, which equals 79 seconds. So once again, if we divide the file size, which is 72,026 megabytes, by 79, which is the time taken in seconds, we get 911. So that is 911 megabytes per second for the read speed. Anyways, what I'm going to do now is just do a bit of an end summary and just wrap up this video. Okay, so to an end summary then, and this is likely to be quite short because I think I've probably already shown everything that I would need to show during the video there, and basically give you the bottom line of whether you should buy this drive or not for your iPhone 15 Pro Max. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the SK Hynix Beetle X31 1TB SSD is an absolute must for anybody who wants basically the fastest off-the-shelf SSD for their iPhone 15 Pro Max for backing stuff off to it and, like, you know, maybe putting stuff back onto the iPhone and things like that. As you could see, those speeds there were absolutely insane. Now, I know some people out there are going to go, but Dave, you've just said that's the fastest, like, SSD, blah, 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 for the iPhone. Well, here's the thing. I've tested a number of different drives, right? And none of them have been faster than this. Now, if somebody else out there can find me a faster drive, fair enough, show me. But this so far has been the fastest off-the-shelf drive that I've used with this iPhone. Now, when I say off-the-shelf, I just mean something that you can, like, you know, just go and buy from Amazon or somewhere and just plug it straight in and it goes. Now, I have also been building drives or putting drives together, which basically consist of using an external enclosure and then buying NVMe SSDs and putting them in the enclosure and then plugging them into the iPhone. We'll see, even with those drives, this is up there with those as well. So basically, yeah, you know, there's absolutely nothing bad at all whatsoever about this drive that I can say. Anywho, that'll do it for this video. Oh yeah, and don't forget, if you want to see how this performs with the iPhone 15 Pro Max recording ProRes 422 HQ 4K 60 frames per second video directly to it, don't forget to go and watch that video. There'll be a link and whatnot somewhere. And if you've liked the video, a thumbs up would be fantastic. And if you super liked the video, then a sub to the channel would be absolutely awesome. I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.